Gina DeLuca here. Alright, so today I'm going to be doing a straight pour. I am going for a sunset kind of vibe. I guess they could be sunrise as well. So I have a lot of custom blended colors here. I am using the DecoArt Americana Decor Satin Enamel in pure white. All of these colors in the small cups have satin enamel in them. The mix that I do is 50% satin enamel and then 50% other paints, whatever that winds up being. All of these colors except for this one is the Deep Violet from Liquitex Basics. That is just satin enamel and the Deep Violet. These other colors also have Liquitex Basics Titanium White added. This is Quinacridone Magenta. This is Artist Loft Vermillion. This yellow is Cadmium Yellow Medium Hue from Basics. And this one is mostly white. It's mostly titanium white and the satin enamels with a drop of Payne's Gray. My base coat color is Payne's Gray and titanium white. I know a lot of people might look at these colors and think Easter egg, but using pastels with a neutral like this gray that I created will really tone down the pastel nature, and it doesn't feel so Easter eggy. So you'll see how that works out. These paints have been mixed 1 part paint to 2 parts Floetrol, and that mixture is then thinned with some water until I get the consistency that I am looking for. That consistency, let me see if it's better on a lighter color. This is about a 2 on my consistency scale. It makes a mound, but it disappears very quickly. And it's making a nice thin, even stream off of my stick. If it gets thin and thick and thin, then your consistency is inconsistent and you need to mix some more. Before we get started, have you seen the Fluid Art inspiration cards? If you have, you can fast forward about a minute, but if you have not, what we have are 52 cards. There are 42 technique cards, and each technique card has an associated video here on YouTube that gives you all of the information that you need, the exact paint, brand, color, consistency, the recipe, and of course the technique, all of the things I can't fit onto a card. This is a picture of the painting in that video. This box contains a tip for this technique, and here at the bottom you have the color palette that was used in this painting. And then these 2 boxes can be used together as the basis of a 2-color palette. And there are also 8 bonus color palette cards. Each one has 5 color palettes. You can use all of the colors or just some of the colors, mix and match the bonus color palette cards with the technique cards, and you have more combinations than you could ever paint in a lifetime. These are available at my website, ginadeluca.net, and also at amazon.com. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is put some paint in my cup. I'm going to put about 2 ounces in here. I want to make sure that there is enough paint for my cell makers to react with. You'll see I've already coated my edges here. The reason that I do that is I mix these paints thin, and I'm using Floetrol, and that combination does not necessarily give you the best coverage on the sides of your canvas. And because this is a custom blended color, I don't want to have to try to figure out exactly the blend of colors that I used to fix the edges. It's just a lot easier to take that 2 minutes to cover the edges before you paint, so that regardless of what happens on the sides, if it sticks, if it doesn't stick, it's gonna look good. If you don't cover the edges first, then you have to touch it up later or frame it or deal with canvas showing through. And I don't want to do any of those things. I prefer to troubleshoot before there's trouble. I am laying down a base coat because I want my paints to slide around evenly and easily if I do not put down a base coat. The first thing that is going to stick to the canvas is the paint that hits it first. So that is going to be your puddle. It's going to be the edges of your puddle. And the center of the puddle is going to roll over the edges. When that happens, it is changing your composition. Sometimes the coolest stuff that happens on the edge of your puddle, and laying down a base coat gives you more options composition wise. Also, I use a color that is in my painting. So if there are any bubbles left in my base coat that decide to pop up through my pour, at least it matches. If I use white and there's no white in my painting and I wind up with these little tiny pinhead sized cells, they drive me insane. So it is just easier to use a color that is already in my base coat or already in my painting, so I don't have to worry about that. I did spray the back of this canvas, but it is looking a little bit saggy to me. Don't like that at all. Going to pop the bubbles in the base coat. I will do this again before I pour. The bubbles, when used correctly, can be your friend, as you will see, but not in your base coat. I'm going to load my cup where my pouring spout is. I don't like that this is on this side, but this is how the cup is, and so that's just how it is. But I load my cup, I'm going to turn it that way because I'm used to loading from this side, where the spout is. Pouring from up high, going to let it sink and churn. That is what gives me the beautiful blending that I love when I use multiple cell makers together. That's what gives me those groovy boulder cells. Just checking the consistency. Again, from up high. Now for my orange blend, the Vermillion. Now my yellow. And now for my mostly white, I didn't want to use a pure white. I wanted a white that goes with that background. So sometimes instead of using straight white, I will just add a drop of the background color to it, and then it kind of homogenizes everything. And I'm going to take a bit of what is left in my cup here and just go over top. So all of those cell makers have a bit of paint to react with. All right, let's make a mess, shall we? I'm just going to do a straight pour. I might do a little ring action just to give a bit of interest. Getting closer to the canvas as I get towards the end of my cup. That's going to give me more control. It's kind of coming out funny at the end here. And typically what happens at the very end of my cup, I get whatever the last color that I put in the cup, which is that white, will end up at the very center. For some reason, a bit of that ends up there almost every time. Okay, so this technique creates a lot of bubbles. This was actually close to the end of my jar of the satin enamel. Sometimes you get the best cells from a fresh jar. I'm not worried, it'll be pretty either way, I think. But in a straight pour, when you are using a matte paint, the matte paints that are lying underneath the top layer, when you pop those bubbles, it brings some of that paint with it. And matte paints have a hydrophobic effect. They will push the glossier paints away. So, let me get this cat hair before it causes me trouble. As it pushes the other paints away, the cells get bigger. And if I allow them to develop, let the paint puddle percolate, let the cells develop first before I stretch, I will get bigger, juicier cells. I'm not seeing a whole lot of boulder cell action here, so I'm thinking that my jar is at the end of its fun stage for cell making anyway. Still more bubbles in my base coat. Let's get those. If I were using a fresh jar of the satin enamels, these cells would be much bigger and a lot more separation. So, I'm gonna have to try this again with some fresher satin enamels. I like the idea. I think it'll still be pretty. I guess we'll find out. So this part takes patience to allow cells to develop. Maybe I'm not going to get my big, giant, juicy boulder cells, but there will be cells that develop. And when I stretch them, they will get bigger. Every time I pop these bubbles, some cells pop up. There will be some cool stuff going on here in the center. I can see that. And the more I stretch, the more cells tend to pop up too. More of the pearl cell action. Okay. I think I'm going to give this a stretch. Just trying to decide which direction I would like to head. Typically I go in this direction and I kind of feel like that's where I'm going. If you see the center paint rolling over top of the edges, you might be tilting too quickly. It will get there. If you've ever had a painting that isn't level, you know how much it can shift and move over time. I want a lot of stretch and motion in this one, so no corner catcher today. Again, patience is your friend. And you can get pretty precise if you let the weight of the paint do the work. You'll see I will almost get a corner. I can't get a 90-degree corner, but I can get darn close. And now I bring the weight of the paint back to center before I change direction. The weight of the paint is going to be where your paint is moving the fastest. And so I'll let the weight of the paint push the other paints around. So I feel like this is a little dry right here. I'm going to take some of these scrapings and just give that a little bit of juice. It's going to get tilted off, but it's going to make this area move a little more smoothly, because I can see that those edges started to dry up a little bit. If it appears it's not coming off your canvas evenly, you probably have areas that have start to get a bit of a skin, like right here. And this is all going to get blended in. It's not going to matter that it's not my base coat color. I'm more looking for the ease of flow. Okay, again, I'm going to come back to center. Now the weight of my paint is right around there, and I want this to come off a bit. So I'm going to use the weight of that paint to push that edge over. There we go. Bringing the weight of the paint back to center again before I change direction. That is really going to help you stretch out your painting in a more even fashion and keep your cells from getting wonky, a bad kind of wonky. A little bit of wonky is okay, because that's what the boulder cells, what gives them that cool 3D effect. Yes, this takes a long time. The bigger the canvas, the longer it takes to cover it. Because patience is your friend, y'all. Just gonna give that corner a bit of zhuzh. Okay, and again, bringing the weight of the paint back to center. And I see I want this edge a bit more tilted off, so I'm going to bring the weight of the paint over to that section and then allow that to push that edge off a bit, just a bit, not a lot. I want to catch those cells so I can stretch them. Catch them and stretch them. There we go. Now, I need to make some composition choices here. Is there anything else that I want to accentuate or dump off? Still don't think I'm loving this section right here, so I'm going to tilt a bit in that direction. Then I can stretch those boulder cells out a bit more. So you can see I am just tilting off that center. That's all that's coming off because I am using the weight of the paint to boss the other paints around. Okay, I like that better. It's giving me more movement and it's letting me stretch those cells a bit more. Okay, I think that's it. I'm gonna leave it be. I'm going to let this sit and see what else develops. And I will bring you in for a close-up. Back in a few. Okay, here it is. This is halfway dry, as you can see. But that gives you an idea of how these pieces dry. You can see kind of in the upper left corner how the matte paints create the cells. That was how I discovered this technique. I got a bunch of cells by accident, and when it dried, I noticed that the paints were matte. The ones that made the cell looked matte compared to the background, and so I started testing all of my paints and discovered that when I used matte and glossy paints together, magic would happen. Got some really beautiful boulder cells going on in there. Lots of 3D effects going on. Even though it didn't look like much at first, when you stretch it out, cool things happen. And you can see it doesn't quite look like an Easter egg. That gray really tones down the pastel. It's looking a bit more, the gray is looking a bit more green on camera. It is not green. Sometimes the camera just picks it up funny. But that's what the result is. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. Please do like, share, and subscribe. If you are subscribed and you aren't receiving notifications, make sure you have clicked that bell. YouTube demands that you click the bell if you want to receive notifications, so be sure to do that. Do check out the description box below for links to my PayPal tip jar if you feel so inclined. Also, like that little area right there, it looks like it's diving underwater. That's kind of cool. Also in the description box, you'll find the links to my affiliates, DecoArt being one of them. Grab yourself some of these paints. There is a coupon code there. Also, my website, GinaDeLuca.net, where you will find my art and music and the fluid art inspiration cards for sale. And you will also find the link to our Facebook group. Go make some art. Join us there. Post your masterpieces. Ask your questions. Get some inspiration. A good time is had by most. It is the internet after all. All right, that is it for me for today. I hope y'all have a beautiful day. Now go make some art.